Hey everyone, today we're going to see how to build a custom calendar using fullcalendar.io. What I'm going to focus on first is providing a JSON feed that will give us those events in a usable format. So here's a static example of what the JSON should look like. I'm going to take this, bring it into a web template, and then we'll loop over that and we'll make that dynamic. The first thing that I'm going to do is create an advanced find that gives me access to all of those details. So I've got a couple of tables involved in this. I've got a tour date table, which is for one specific event, one specific night within a tour. I've got the artist, so I want to pull some information, for example, who is the artist for this tour. And then there'll be some information from the tour, which is the parent of this tour date record. So for example, this is Guns N' Roses Middle East tour. And on the calendar, I want to output here a list of all the dates with those details that I saw in the JSON. First, I'm going to do an advanced find based on tour date. Status equal active is a decent start. I'm going to edit the column so I've got everything that I want to include within that JSON. So I also want the end date, whether it's an all-day event, the booking link, and then from the related tables, I want access to the description from the tour. So I'm assuming that's going to be the same for every event, so I don't need to keep populating the description. I want the main artist for the tour. So I'll apply that and grab my Fetch XML. So an easy way to do that, I can come straight in here to edit filters and download Fetch XML. But I assume I'll probably want to come back into this view, make some changes in future. So I'm going to save that as a personal view. And then I can come back and grab the Fetch XML for that. Here's a list of all my views, including my system views, and it's this one that I want to get the Fetch XML for. So where do I actually put that? I'm going to go into the portal management app and I want to start a new web template. So first things first, I want my Fetch XML query, which is going to be based on tour dates, giving that a meaningful name so I can access it in Liquid shortly. Copy my Fetch XML. And not a requirement, but to make it easier to view, grab my attribute. I like to split this out over multiple lines. Okay, we're nearly done. And the next thing that I'm going to do is give my related records a meaningful alias. This is a link to the tour record. I'm simply going to call that tour. I'm pulling the description and the artist from the tour. I need a way to reference those. And then I want to check whether I got any results. So if this query, the results will be stored in a collection called results.entities. And I'm interested in how many records there are. I've got access to that in the size property. If there are more than 0 results, I need to remember to close that, if and if. And then within that, I want to loop through the records. So for each result in that collection of results, and this is where I'll be outputting each event, and I'll close my for loop. Taking a look at my JSON, we also always want that opening square bracket, so I'm going to put that between my if and my for, because that doesn't get repeated for every result. It's just before the first one and after the last one. And then let's take a look at what's special about each of these. So I'm going to copy in all the detail for one particular record. This would represent one event, and that would represent the other event. I'm going to loop over this information to start with. There's one thing here that's going to be a bit of a pain, and that is this comma at the end. So for this to be valid JSON, it needs to have a comma after every object apart from the last one. So the moment I put a comma in here, it's invalid and I'd get issues. What I can do is use a bit of liquid for that. I'm going to say, unless this is the last item in the loop. So if this is a forloop.last, include that comma. I don't want to do anything instead. If it is the last, include the comma. If there's not, don't include anything. So what I'm going to do, just make sure that I'm on the right track, is I'm going to save where I'm up to, make sure that outputs some valid JSON, so I know that my Fetch XML query, my loop, that's all working correctly, and then I can actually make these contents dynamic, replace those with fields from the table. So to get that onto the portal, there isn't a direct means to put a web template onto the live portal to give it a URL. We're a few steps away. What I need to do is to create a page template. Which type do we want? Rewrite is for those old ADX Studio type templates. What we care about is a web template, and here's the one we've just been creating. I'm going to leave the defaults for now, and then I'll show you what we need to change specifically to treat this as JSON. The table name is my tour date. And now I've got a page template, I'm able to create a web page. The page template I want is one that I've just created, which was concert calendar. I don't see that immediately because of a slightly annoying view that's in place for that lookup. So I'm going to go to Advanced Lookup and change the view from Active Web Page Templates, which is the default view. And that really means only show me page templates that are already in use on a web page. Ours isn't. So I'm going to go to active page templates, and then I've got access to my page template. And let's say that is published. Okay, I'm quickly going to log into the portal, clear my cache, and go and take a look at that page. For those of you using Power Pages, you can simply hit the preview button. I'm going to clear the cache and then go and navigate to that page. Right, so I've got something wrong. It's not expecting that end if. Let's take a look. So I'm going to go, the quick way to get back from my web page to my web template is via the page template lookup and then the web template lookup. I've got a fetch XML tag, a closing fetch XML tag, for loop. Here we are. I've got unless opening, but closing and if that needs to be end unless. So once you start to recognize those errors, you'll get a feel for what to. Okay, so that's looking something like what I want. I'm getting the fields represented in a string. It's repeating. I only get the square bracket at the start and once at the end. But that's not going to be acceptable for the calendar plugin. So what I need to do is to say, don't include that header and footer, and to treat my web template as JSON. First of all, on my web template, I'm going to say the MIME type is application/JSON. On the page template, don't include the header and footer. So when I view that now, it's going to be completely unstyled and it's going to be treated as JSON. Yep, that's looking good. I could perhaps validate that. So I'm going to take a copy, go to maybe JSON lint, and check, is that valid JSON? Yes, it is. Okay, let's now work with that and populate it with our dynamic values. So for example, for the unique ID for each tour date, I want to get the GUID of that tour date. So I'm going to say we're calling one tour date a result. So I want to output something, double curly braces in liquid. I want result dot, and then I'll go and see what that's called. That will tend to be the table name ending in ID. So I'm looking for tour date ID. What do I want as the title? I'm just going to use the name field. Now for the dates, you'll see they're in a very particular format. So this example that I've put together, this is based on the exact format provided by Full Calendar in their examples. It's known as ISO 8601. Luckily, Liquid has a filter that takes care of converting our dates to that format. So I'm going to start by getting the start date. So result, start date and time. But I need to output that. I need to transform it into a different format. So I'm going to say date to ISO 8601. So what's here after the pipe character is a filter. And there are all kinds of different formats that we can transform our output into using liquid filters. So this is a highly recommended resource. Available liquid filters in the Microsoft Docs. So the one that I've just gone for there, of all the categories, is a date filter. You can see that takes a date and outputs it in that format, precisely what we want. So I'm going to do the same for the end date. So none of these steps particularly difficult or complicated. It's just knowing about those specific formats. Again, I want to output that date to ISO 8601. And my URL field is going to be where the user is taken to when they click on one of these events. So I want that to be the booking link. For now, I've got that going externally. For a future tutorial, I might show how to complete the payments for these, as in implement that payment functionality. So these are all out-of-the-box properties in terms of what full calendar expects. Then extended props are things that are specific to my use case. So I've added in things like the venue, the artist, the tour. There's not a way to manage those. There's not out-of-the-box fields ready for those with full calendar. So that's why we're told to use this extended props option. Later, we'll see how we get access to those. So the venue is directly on my record. I've got that, the first part of the venue in the name field. And then the second part of the venue is going to be in my venue field. The artist is going to be a hop away. So this isn't on the tour date record, but it is on the tour record. So what I need to do is use that alias that we created. So I need to say, not directly on the tour date, but on tour dot, then the name of this field. So let's give that a whirl. I'm going to say for result. Then I've got something else in the way. I've got the tour dot main artist. And then because this is a complex field, it won't just output something immediately. I need to specify for that lookup, do I either want the ID, which would be the GUID, or do I want the name? So the name being more user-friendly, that's what I'll output. We're going to do much the same for this tour name. I can just say that tour is available via the tour lookup field, which is directly on the tour date. And it's the name that I want to output. A quick reminder, the reason that these are in different formats, this is saying look at the tour date, tour lookup field that is directly on this table we're working with. and output its name. This one is going a step further, saying from this collection of results, look at the related table called tour, output its lookup table to the artist, and output its name. So the final thing, the description, this is also going to come from that related record of the tour. I'm going to copy that as a starting point. So yes, I want, for this result, look at the related entity of tour, and it's the description that I want. Description's a simple field. I don't need then to say name, ID, or anything like that. And in fact, one other element that I would like to output that I forgot about was the booking status. So this will tell me things like whether tickets are on sale, if they've already sold out. I don't think I included that column. I'll just quickly add it into the view. There we are, ticket availability. From this result, I want to see the ticket availability, and this is a choice column, so that's a complex type as well. This time I get to choose whether I want the numeric value or the label. So things that I'm showing on the front end, I'm usually going to give that user-friendly label. If I was doing something with logic like conditional formatting perhaps, then I would use a numeric value. So I don't think that was too painful in terms of setup. Might well have been for watching it, but what I'm saying is if there are any results, output these square brackets. Within them, we want one of these objects every time. We're transforming our output where applicable, so things like the dates we're putting into a meaningful format. And then only if this is not the last result, include a comma between these objects. Now I'm going to go and check now whether my JSON is valid. One thing I'm mindful of is that description field could contain any type of character, so I need to specifically escape anything that wouldn't be allowed in JSON. So I can do that with another very handy liquid filter, which is simply called escape. So let's give that a whirl. I'm going to save, clear my cache, refresh that page, and let's validate that JSON again. So it's looking good to the naked eye. I don't think that's a good enough test. So let's see how that looks in the validator. Right, so there's something disallowed in the URL field. Let's go and take a look at that. I never closed the brackets. I'm not good at opening and closing brackets, it would seem. Okay, so it took some getting to. Not purely making excuses here, but those are errors you're likely to run into in the real world. So it's useful to see, come in to validate the JSON, how to counteract some of those issues. So that's all good. That would work whether we've got one event, 10 events, hundreds of events. Let's pause there and then we'll come back to see how to make use of that endpoint to actually populate our calendar.